Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video I'm going to discuss the key press conference updates and answer some of your questions such as what to do with Nkunku, should we triple captain Haaland, what is the best Game Week 2 wildcard squad and much more. If you do enjoy today's video, please do smash that like button. If you are new around here, make sure to subscribe as well, but without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, as always, I'm going to start with the key press conference updates as of Friday at 3 PM, which is roughly when I'm recording this. And if it sounds useful to you, if you're new to this channel, the idea of getting the key press conference updates every Friday, and on top of that, also getting your key questions and dilemmas answered ahead of the deadline, please do consider subscribing. I do this video every single week, alongside lots more content, such as the deadline stream tomorrow, where I'll be locking in my team. But we got some pretty major press conference updates that maybe weren't expecting, and sadly, the biggest one is that Solanke's out for Game Week 2. There were rumours circulating yesterday that he hadn't been pictured in training, and it does appear to be the case. So at least Ange confirmed it. And thank you so much, Ange, for actually being trustworthy and giving us clear information. Cough, cough, Eddie Howe and Mikel Arteta. But Ange is really good for this normally. And I'm glad that we obviously had him giving us that clarity with it. So what he said: Dom picked up a knock in the last game. He got through the game, but it flared up the day after, and he will miss the game tomorrow. It just depends on his recovery. Obviously, we've got the international break, but it's not serious. So firstly, definitely out of the Everton game. After that, they then play Newcastle and Arsenal anyway. So the next two fixtures aren't very good for Spurs. Maybe some of you would have been looking to sell him in Game Week 3 anyway. And you could look at this two ways, right? He says it's not serious, which is great. He's not really damaged the ligaments based on that. He's not going to be out particularly long term. But the fact that he says we've got the international break leads me to believe that he believes he'll miss the Newcastle game in Game Week 3, and then we have the international break between Game Week 3 and 4. So maybe we're reading too much into it, but based on this, I would say he's obviously definitely out for Game Week 2. There's a very good chance he misses Game Week 3, and then they're hoping that over the international break he can recover in time for Game Week 4. But remember that Game Week 4 is against Arsenal. So you may well have him for no game in Game Week 2, no game in Game Week 3, an international break, and then a fixture against Arsenal. And obviously, if that's the case, then you probably want to look to sell him anyway. It largely depends on how long you were planning on owning him, what your cover looks like. Have you already made a transfer? If you've already removed the player and this is for a -4, I'm much less likely to suggest you doing it. For me, I don't have much good backup for Solanke. I have a defender that I can play instead, and I'll discuss my team at the end. So I could play like a 4-4-2. But I don't really want Solanke for Game Week 3 and 4 anyway. I knew that I might want to move him to someone like a Watkins or downgrade him. And also, there's no guarantee that he's even back then. So for me, as of now, because I don't have great cover, I also think there are some great opportunities to attack with a transfer. I'm currently, at the moment, looking at actually removing Solanke. And at the end of the video, please watch the whole thing first, but at the end of the video, I'll look at my team. And in that section, I will discuss my favourite Solanke replacements. But most of them are going to be downgrades all the way to like 6 or 5.5, which not only gives you a great cheap option, but it frees up funds to then make future moves in Game Week 3 and 4. So overall, my impression is I would probably remove Solanke in most cases, unless you were planning on keeping him long term, or you've just got some really good cover. It might solve some benching headaches for some of you potentially. The other injury was actually Quansah. So Quansah was hooked at halftime in Game Week 1. He's been causing issues for a lot of managers. He obviously fell to 4.4 midweek, and a lot of people had already sold Quansah before the price fall, but some of you had maybe kept him in the hope that he starts. Unfortunately, not only was he hooked at halftime, but he's also picked up an injury on Tuesday. So Slot said, I spoke to him immediately after the game and on Sunday, obviously about the reason for taking him off. On Tuesday, he picked up a bit of an injury, so let's see if he can train today. So as of Friday, he's still not trained. I just said to him that he lost 1 or 2 important duels. So I thought Konate would probably start anyway, but the fact that Konate put in a really decent performance when he came on, the fact that Quansah was subbed at halftime, and also the fact that Quansah hasn't been able to train all week, I would be extremely shocked if the back line isn't obviously Trent, Konate, Van Dijk, Robertson. So for me, I mean, if you've not already sold Quansah, you can't really go anywhere now because he's 4.4. But if you need a starting defender, maybe go to someone like a Harwood Bellis at 4 million, because you're unlikely. I think it's almost impossible that you're going to get a start from Quansah now, based on this. So really unfortunate if you started the season with him. Hopefully, if you still own him, you can bench him. But if you need to start, I'd probably look at removing for a 4 million defender. On Man City, Pep said that Rodri is getting better and he's close, but he's unlikely to be available. So I reckon from Game Week 3 onwards, Rodri will be back in the City team, and obviously that makes them much stronger. Interestingly, Savinho or Savio, whatever you'd like to call him, feels better and he has partially trained. So there is a chance that he gets involved in Game Week 2. This might be enough to put me off Doku, Bernardo Silva, maybe Foden, but I still feel like Foden's going to start. But I would be surprised if Savinho starts, and as a result, you could still go there. But the fact that he's not out long term, it just makes me feel like if you go for Doku this week and you get a start, great. But then what happens in Game Week 3? What happens in Game Week 4? It's the same with Bernardo Silva and Foden. Even if they play centrally with other people on the wings, you've then got Gundogan that's just come back into the team, which I think is absolutely amazing for Man City fans. But overall, this makes me just not want any of the City assets outside of maybe Foden, and obviously Erling Haaland is fantastic, and we'll discuss triple captain Haaland a little bit later. So Man City getting their players back. Yankuba Minte will be available for Game Week 2. So if you didn't see, by the way, fantastic performance from the £5.5 million midfielder in Game Week 1. He did come off before the halftime mark with a concussion, or it was concussion protocol anyway, but apparently they have followed all of the relevant procedures, they have gone by the book, and he is now available for Game Week 2. I have put on the graphic, I'm not saying that means he starts, he might still be on the bench now as a result, they might ease him back in, but if they've followed all of the protocols that they need to, and Minte is available, then I would imagine that he would start. So I'd still be pretty comfortable if I had him and I wanted to start him, giving him the nod in Game Week 2. Bournemouth's new signing, Eva Nilsson. Sorry if I butchered that pronunciation. I've looked at his stats. I've never really watched him, I'll be entirely honest, but his underlying data looks very strong. There's a chance he could be on penalties for Bournemouth, and he's only 6 million as well. So that could be a really nice signing for Bournemouth, and I think he could get straight into that starting 11. As to whether he will start in Game Week 2, I don't know, but I think for now we don't really need to rush into Bournemouth assets, but definitely keep your eye on him. And then Sanderberg and Anderson, the two new signings for Fulham, and we'll discuss new signings in a second. I don't think either of them are going to feature. So Sanderberg, we've had confirmation that he's not available to start, and Anderson's transfer still hasn't gone through and been confirmed. So as a result, if you've got Anderson, whilst I think him moving to Fulham isn't an awful thing for your FPL team, you're probably not going to get a start now in Game Week 2. And Sanderberg's not going to start, which I think just means that they might still be a little bit susceptible defensively. Because I think once he comes in, that will really shore up their team and their midfield. But for now, they don't have either of those two players. So those are the key updates. Really, from an FPL perspective, I think it's just Quansah will not probably feature. And Dominic Solanke definitely won't. Let's now take a look at some of those new transfers that I mentioned and how they might affect FPL. So there are various moves at the moment happening in and out of the Premier League that will affect FPL, and probably as of me recording this, there are more taking place as we get towards the end of the transfer window. So this isn't an exhaustive list. This is just a few transfers that I wanted to pick out that have happened recently that might affect our FPL teams either now, but more realistically in the near future. And one of those was Van den Berg signing from Liverpool to Brentford for 25 million. Last season, he had an incredibly impressive season at Mainz. And I think he'll be worth all of that 25 million if he can settle into that Brentford defence. And I don't think they pay that much for him if he's not going to start pretty much every game for them. And he is a 4 million defender in FPL. So if you want to take a risk that he gets into that starting 11 soon, probably not this week, but maybe from Game Week 6 onwards when their fixtures start to improve, let's say you're not planning on wildcarding now, or you are wildcarding right now, and you just want a 4 million defender that you think longer term would be good, maybe you take the risk on Van den Berg. Like I said, I can't see them signing him for that money to sit on the bench, but they do play 3 centre-backs, which helps because there's an extra spot, but they've got a lot of good ones. At the moment, it's Pinnock, Collins, and Ayer. They also have Ben Mee that's just sat on the bench, who is perfectly capable, and obviously Van den Berg too. I'm probably missing one. As of right now, I do wonder if it's maybe Pinnock that misses out. Collins, I feel like, has to start. And Ayer White, of the 3, you might expect him to miss out. I think he's got a completely different profile to the other centre-backs. And so that is surprising to me, because I think Pinnock's great, but maybe it's not Pinnock, maybe it is Ayer or Collins. I suppose we need to see. For me, it's just from Game Week 6 onwards, when I'm on my wild card, which is looking like the likely slot for a lot of us, I think Van den Berg could be a seriously good option, and I would at least keep him in your mind. But as of right now, I'd probably go for like a Greaves, a Fass, or a Harwood Bellis if you need to start them this week. Speaking of 4 million defenders, Barco has joined Sevilla, or is in the process of doing so. As soon as he becomes red flagged in the game, as soon as FPL say he has moved to Sevilla, he will be price locked at whatever that price is. So as long as he doesn't fall to 3.9 before FPL red flag him, he will be price locked at 4 million. So if that's the case, yeah, it's great that you can't rely on him, but at least you're not going to lose value on him falling in price. So Barco, dead as an option, really gutting for people that went for him, but that was always a risk, I suppose, going for a 4 defender if you needed to rely on them. Speaking of defenders, I love this transfer. Alex Moreno has joined Nottingham Forest from Villa. He is now a Forest player in the game as well. I love this signing for them. I do think he'll start at left back pretty much every game, maybe after game week 2. There's a chance, by the way, he does start or feature in game week 2, but from game week 3 onwards, I think he'll start every game for Forest as the left back. Again, why are they signing him if it's for rotation? He's too good for that. He's not going to go from a rotation risk at Villa to then doing the same at Forest. He's going to want to start. Lots of people worried about Ola Aina. As of right now, I don't even know if he's fit and available for game week 2. I think the latest update we've got, again, as of me recording it, is that he's a doubt and he'll have a late fitness test. If he's available, I think Ola Aina will start. And in all honesty, I think once Moreno starts at left back, my prediction is that Ola Aina switches to right back and it's actually Nico Williams that drops out. But although Forest fans rate Williams very highly, so I think there's probably too much rotation now, sadly. I thought Ola Aina would be very, very nailed. But if Moreno's signing, it's only one of Williams or Ola Aina that can play. And whilst I think it will be Aina, I think Williams is also very, very capable in that position. So probably now, doesn't need to be an immediate sell, but someone that you're maybe not going to get as many minutes from as you maybe thought. We have another £6.5 million midfielder as well with João Felix. I think this is a great signing for Chelsea. I know a lot of people don't agree with that. I thought he'd come in as a forward, but he's a midfielder, maybe because they expect him to either play as the 10 or off the left. I think there's a very good chance he starts as the 9, along with Nkunku, and maybe there's a bit of rotation there. I don't think this will affect Nkunku's minutes too much in the short term. And like I said, in the long term, I can see them playing together, but it's just something to monitor and keep an eye on. And maybe João Felix himself will become a decent option at some point. But as of right now, something to keep an eye on. I think Maresca said in his embargoed quotes that João Felix is unlikely to get many minutes in game week 2. So something to just consider moving forward. And then, as I said, the two previous signings that I spoke about in the last section, which is Anderson and Sanderberg for Fulham. What an incredible two signings that is to just strengthen up the defence, because last season they were 14th for expected goals conceded. Against Man United, they gave up about 2.5 XG. They're not a particularly good defence at the moment. So I think signing Anderson and signing Sanderberg, once both of them get into the starting 11, I think that makes the likes of Robinson, Anderson himself, but maybe even like a Leno, really good options. So I think Fulham could be really exciting this season. I'd be really happy if I was a Fulham fan, especially if they hold on to Andreas and they've got Smith Rowe. Iwobi's been brilliant for a couple of seasons now. Muniz is exciting. It's a really strong team that they've built there, so I'd be excited as a Fulham fan. Like I said, there are more transfers that are being rumoured at the moment. For example, Eddie Nketiah joining Nottingham Forest. Once that goes through, if it goes through, that would be incredibly exciting. But we'll discuss that after the Game Week 2 deadline. As of now, the main one for me is probably Vandenberg at 4 million looks really exciting. Moreno at some point, and then just keep an eye on Fulham because I think this will make them very strong. So guys, something worth discussing is Chelsea's Thursday game in the Europa Conference League, in which they beat Servette. I think it's pronounced FC 2-0. And obviously it's important to discuss because Nkunku did start in that game. So you can see on your screen, courtesy of SofaScore, the starting 11 for Chelsea, and also some of the stats and how many minutes Nkunku played. Apart from Caicedo and Nkunku, 9 of the players were rotated or changed since their game against Man City. So you would largely say that this is Chelsea's B team, or at least a heavily rotated team. So as soon as I saw Nkunku starting, I was extremely worried. Because as I said, apart from Caicedo, who was the captain in this game, none of the other players started. Neto was another interesting one that started, but I think that's about building up his fitness and Maresca getting a bit of an idea about how he's going to fit into the Chelsea system. And obviously he won't continue to start on the right wing unless we're expecting Palmer to come central. So all in all, my first thought was I'm not happy that Nkunku started. But in general, looking at the stats, I didn't watch the game. He's had a fairly okay game there. He won a penalty in the 50th minute, which he then converted. And then he came off in the 58th minute. Now, that's a bit of PTSD for what happened in game week 1. It's another pre-60 sub. And I think all this comes down to is how you want to frame it. We talk about the framing effect all the time in psychology, but I could frame it as this is amazing news, right? And Nkunku starts no matter what. He's so crucial to that Chelsea team. He also took a penalty. If Palmer's not on the pitch, great, Nkunku's on pens. He's building up his fitness. This is great news. Or you could frame it as, well, he started in Chelsea's B team. Once again, he's not even managed to get 60 minutes. He's clearly not fully fit. And this is either a matter of him not being definitely in Chelsea's starting 11 or him needing to build up fitness. I think it's probably somewhere in the middle of all of that, but it really comes down to how you want to frame it. I think for me, overall, Nkunku getting 58 minutes, looking pretty good and getting on the score sheet, regardless of whether it was a penalty or not. I think that is all relatively positive. I would have been more worried if he didn't come off around 60 and he'd got 90 minutes. At that stage, I would have probably been looking to sell because I don't think he plays 90 minutes on a Thursday and then plays at the weekend. So I would expect Nkunku to start. But what I have gained from the last couple of games for Chelsea in terms of changes to my prior expectations is I think Nkunku's expected minutes need to be dropped by about 10. So at the start of the season, we have these prior expectations about how many minutes a player will play. I had Nkunku at about 80. I thought on average Nkunku would play 75 to 80 minutes for Chelsea. I now think that that needs to be dropped to about 65 minutes. So now what we are considering Nkunku as is a 65-minute asset. Of course, if in Game Week 2, Game Week 3 starts to play 80, 90 minutes, then we change our expectations again. And this is why it's so difficult to make decisions based on one game week of information. But as of right now, the only change to Nkunku for me is that I think his minutes are slightly lower than I previously thought. And if that's the case, well, he's definitely not a sell at the moment. There aren't any players out there that I think are that much better than Nkunku for a similar price that I would be willing to sell him. If he continues to get subbed pre-60 and or he doesn't start the odd game, then he's an immediate sell, obviously, but I need further data and further information to decide that categorically. So some of you might just say, I've seen enough. He's not made 60 minutes in the last 2 games. He was played out on the left. Maresca clearly doesn't trust him to play the full game. Most Premier League goals, by the way, are scored in the final 10 to 15 minutes. You want them on the pitch then. So maybe that is enough for you to move to someone like a Smith Rowe who has 2 really nice fixtures. And I fully understand that. But for me, I'm going to give him one more game. I need at least one more game of information. And because he played in the 10 here, could he continue to play in the 10? Absolutely. We could see Palmer on the right, maybe João Felix or Jackson as the number 9. We could see one of Mudryk, Madueke or someone else on the left. They're various players. Even Keenan Dewsbury Hall, who played more as a pivot here, he can play in the 10 or he could play on the left. So there are various ways that they could approach this. And again, that may be reason enough for you to say, I don't even know what position he's playing in. I don't know what Chelsea's best team is. Chelsea just seem like a bit of a mess in terms of the way they're being run at the moment with their players. I just want to get rid, which I understand. But I would kick myself if he starts in the 10 or as the 9 against Wolves, grabs a return and plays like 75, 80 minutes. At that stage, you're then like, okay, this is more what I was expecting. So for all of those reasons, I'll be keeping Nkunku. I think he's still an okay asset, but I've definitely dropped his expected minutes. And let's discuss it after the Wolves game, when we have another Premier League game under our belt and we have a bit more data. And at that stage, with hopefully 2 free transfers, we might be able to make a more informed decision about Nkunku. I'd love to know down below in the comments, what are you currently planning on doing with him? I should just say, I was going to just end that section there, so apologies for the really abrupt cut. I just wanted to discuss Cole Palmer at this moment. So Cole Palmer was seen clutching his hamstring as he went down the tunnel at the end of the game. He was wincing quite a bit, and he was actually clutching his hamstring for the final few minutes. Maresca said that they did an immediate assessment of him on the night on Thursday and that they think he's going to be fine and that he should be available. But obviously, number one, there's no way to fully know that. He might have felt okay, but then he might wake up on Friday and it might be very sore. They would probably need to do a scan unless it was really something minor and just a bit of tightness. And also, Maresca could have just lied just so that he didn't have to deal with that line of questioning at that point. So we don't yet know 100%, but I just wanted to raise the fact that Palmer was clutching his hamstring as he went down the tunnel. And therefore, I mean, if you've got Palmer, you absolutely have to keep him. I wouldn't send him off the back of that. But maybe let's wait for some potentially embargoed quotes or some extra information that we might glean on sort of Friday evening going into the Saturday deadline. So make sure to tune into the deadline stream because I'll obviously update you there. But I just wanted to raise the point that Palmer was seen going off. If I get any updated information after this video goes live, I'll try to make it a pinned comment. And if I find out any more, obviously follow me over on Twitter and I'll try to share it there. But for now, keep Palmer, keep Nkunku. Let's give him one more week. So by far and away, the questions that you guys were asking me the most was around benching decisions. So I decided to put this graphic together based on all of the players that you were mentioning deciding to start or bench. I'm always hesitant to do this because whilst this probably isn't mathematically true, I feel like I'd have more chance winning the lottery than getting the exact order correct on who would score the most points out of these players. Football is so unpredictable. One of these players could have a really tricky fixture, terrible underlying data, but the ball drops at their feet and they score. I'll point to Chris Wood in game week 1, by the way. I was at the City ground. He was awful the whole game. Barely touched the ball. And when he did, it was pretty poor. But then a rebound just popped to his feet and he gets a 9-pointer. So it's going to be so unpredictable and difficult to predict. However, based on my own kind of gut feeling, combination of stats, fixtures, this is the rough order. I'm struggling with my own benching decisions, so feel free to help me if you want to. There's a very good chance I have to choose between Robinson and Gabriel to start. I might end up needing them anyway based on rumours that are going around on certain players, but Robinson versus Gabriel is like, for me, that's a true 50-50. I've got absolutely no idea. I've run it on different models and algorithms as well. I've asked. It genuinely is a 50-50 for me. You could see Gabriel getting a 15 points. You could see Robinson getting 2 assists and a clean sheet. So who knows? But for me, this is the order that I would go in. So Arsenal attackers, I just wouldn't be benching them. I know Villa kept 2 clean sheets last year. I know it's not a great fixture, but I still like the idea of Havertz and Ødegaard. So for me, I would put them above the rest. I would be starting my Arsenal attackers. Muniz and Smith Rowe would be next for me. I currently don't have any Fulham attackers in my team. I might do by the deadline, who knows, and we'll discuss my team at the end. But Muniz and Smith Rowe have a nice home fixture. I think Fulham will create chances. I think defensively, they will still ship a lot of chances this season. They were 14th last year for expected goals conceded, but this season I expect them to score goals. I don't expect Leicester to be particularly good defensively. Whilst they had a very good second half against Spurs, and overall they didn't give up too many chances in terms of like total XG, I still feel like Spurs could have scored 3 or 4 there. And so for me, I think Fulham have the opportunity to score goals against Leicester. So I really like the idea of Menez and Smith-Rowe. Menez and Smith-Rowe. I'm going to leave that in. Menez and Smith-Rowe. Then moving on to Wood, I think after that I would have a couple of the Nottingham Forest attackers because they do have a good fixture. Whilst I was impressed with Southampton, it's still a newly promoted side. And I still feel like Forest will get chances in that game. I've got Wood ahead of Gibbs-White, despite the fact that I think Gibbs-White is a better asset, and also the fact that I think Gibbs-White's on penalties, mainly due to the fact that I was really disappointed with Gibbs-White in game week 1, and also Wood's data overall is much better than Gibbs-White. His minutes aren't as good, he's not on pens, and whilst I also thought he was very poor in game week 1, he will get more big chances than Gibbs-White in an average week, so I would just about place him ahead. So basically at the moment, it's my Arsenal attackers, I'd say, then Fulham attackers, then Forest attackers. I then have Nkunku after that. So for those of you saying Smith-Rowe or Nkunku, my stance on it as of right now is probably Smith-Rowe. And if you're saying Wood or Nkunku, as of right now, it's Wood. But after that, after those Fulham attackers and those Forest attackers, then I would put Nkunku in there. If I knew that his minutes were going to be 90, I'd have him above all of them. I'd have him after the Arsenal attackers. But we have to go on what we've seen already, which is that he will get an early sub. And I know Smith-Rowe will as well. But I just feel like Smith-Rowe's got the better fixture. And I expect Fulham to potentially score more goals than I would Chelsea. So at the moment, that's the reason for that. We then have the first defender on there, which is Pedro Porro. Assuming that he is fit and available and that he does start, Pedro Porro has to be up there as an option for me, just because I would normally place attackers ahead of defenders. As you can see, most of the attackers are there, and then I've got the list of defenders. But Porro is basically playing as an attacker, and I think he has a very good chance of a clean sheet, despite Spurs not being the best defensively. So for me, Porro has to be up there because I'm treating him almost as an attacker. Then we've got João Pedro on pens. Good data normally, although he was a little bit disappointing in game week 1. But I was very impressed by Brighton. And I think Brighton will score at least 2 goals against United. I truly believe that. If I had to predict the game right now, I'd say it will be 2-2. And so if I think they're going to score 2 goals, I would like their player that I expect to start as the 9 or as the 10 potentially, maybe behind Welbeck, on penalties. So for me, João Pedro is right up there. You could argue that João Pedro should be above the likes of Nkunku, Wood and Menez because he has the pens. But I feel like there's a fine balance between, obviously, you want to favour the penalty takers, but not just because they've got penalties. And I feel like Manchester United will be a better defence, I maybe regret saying this, than the likes of Southampton and Leicester this season. So I would put that as a slightly trickier fixture for João Pedro. I've then got Hudson-Odoi. I know I've got Gibbs-White and Wood up there. I just think that Hudson-Odoi's data isn't as good. He's not on penalties. His minutes, again, won't be perfect. I would just put him below the rest personally, but I still think he's a fine option. Garnacho, Gordon, Murphy, these are all great options as well. I just prefer the fixtures maybe for some of the players before that. So, again, if you've got Gordon, I have no issue starting him, but I don't think Bournemouth away is a great fixture. I don't think that's an easy place to go. And we know that traditionally Gordon's away data has been pretty poor, and I still don't think he's quite there with his fitness. So at the moment, he's there. He's above Murphy just about. But I think there are other players that I would rather start instead of Gordon, which is why I didn't pay 7.5 for him, because I knew in those away fixtures, I wouldn't be necessarily wanting to play him that much. Then when it comes to the defenders, I've honestly got no idea. At the moment, I've got Robinson in my team ahead of Gabriel, but I have no idea if it'll end that way. I might end up playing a 4 at the back. We'll discuss my team, like I said, at the end. I think Robinson versus Arsenal defence is very close. I, of course, have Gabriel ahead of Saliba, because I think he's got more attacking threat. But if you want to play your Arsenal defender, like, it's difficult for me to say that's a bad decision. They are so good defensively. And I think this will be a tight game. I think there'll be a maximum of 2 or 3 goals in this game between Arsenal and Villa. So for that reason, I would probably just about start Robinson, but I think Arsenal defence is still a really good shout. I've got Munoz there, and maybe Munoz deserves to be higher. I said with Porro, he's basically an attacker, so he's higher. Munoz is basically an attacker as well. I just think that West Ham will score in that game. That's my opinion of it. So I think as a result, I've put him a little bit lower. I've then got Ahmad. I just can't predict his minutes at the moment. He might not start. Lewis Hall, I think he's fine. But again, I expect Bournemouth to score. And his attacking threat could be decent. But I feel like some of the other defenders have maybe got higher upside as a result. And then Rodgers obviously down at the bottom. He's got Arsenal. Whilst Villa could do the 3 fixtures in a row over Arsenal, they could absolutely do that and he could score. I would just rather start all of the other players for the fixture. So there we go. It's based mainly on like vibes and gut feeling and just my general perception. And this could change by the deadline, but hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea about your own benching decisions. And let me know down below if I've not mentioned any players that you would like my opinion on, and I'll try to answer as many as possible. So in all honesty, probably the major talking point of Game Week 2, or in the lead up to Game Week 2, has been whether we should triple captain Haaland. And when I say we, obviously not me, because I don't actually even own the man, let alone captain, let alone triple captain. So it could be incredibly painful for me. And make sure to subscribe to the channel and watch my videos next week, because if he hauls, you can all laugh at me and it'll be probably pretty funny for all of you. But with all of that being said, if you already feel like you've heard this conversation enough, because so many people have spoken about it, I spoke about it on my podcast, FPL Therapy, already. So we've already spoken about it a lot, but just to recap and go over and give you my final, hopefully unbiased opinion, despite the fact that I don't own him, should you use the triple captainship on Haaland this week? So I've just got a simple pros and cons table here, and I'm just going to spend a few minutes going through the pros and cons and allow you to come to your own decision about it. So firstly, why is everyone discussing this, apart from it being Haaland against Ipswich? Basically, according to the upcoming schedule for the remainder of the season, because the FA Cup quarterfinals now have their own dedicated weekend and they don't clash with the Premier League, we only have, as of right now, 2 predicted double game weeks, because there aren't more double game weeks caused by that clash. If we only have 2 doubles and there aren't any other things that crop up or any events that cause further doubles, such as game postponements and weather and random things that you can't predict, let's say we only have 2 doubles, you've got the triple captainship, you've got the bench boost, you've got the free hit, and you've got whatever this mystery chip is that we don't know. Yes, you could play the free hit in a blank game week, or game week 38, for example. So let's maybe remove the free hit. But you then still got 3 chips. Most of my ideas about what the mystery chip could be would be a chip that you'd want to play in a double, because that tends to be when chips are most valuable. So let's say that you do want to play the mystery chip in a double, and you've got the bench boost, which is definitely best in a double game week. You are then left with having to play the triple captain in a single game week, unless there is, like I said, some random event that causes another double later down the line. And if you are going to play the triple captain in a single game week, now is a great opportunity to do it. So I've said here, triple captain is usually the lowest upside chip. And what I mean by that is you're only getting 1 extra fixture. You are getting 1 extra fixture for the best player in your team in one of the best fixtures of the season, but you're only getting that 1 extra. Obviously, if you play it in a double, you are getting 2 extra fixtures, but it's quite low upside. If you play the bench boost in a double game week, you are getting 8 extra fixtures. And I know, again, it's 8 extra fixtures for weaker players, but as a result, I always feel like triple captain has the lowest upside. Often you'll only get 10 points maximum sometimes from it. Sometimes they'll blank. So if that's the case, well then why not play it in a week where Haaland has such a good chance of getting points? Also, as of right now, De Bruyne's fit. Haaland's fit. There's no UCL football. There's no direct backup for Haaland. Alvarez isn't going to come off the bench and play instead. Even Oscar Bob, who could play as like the false nine, is not going to come on and play instead. We expect Foden to start the game and maybe get 90 minutes. Not get 90 minutes, I should say. So he's probably not going to play false nine instead of Haaland. I don't even see who comes off the bench to play instead of Haaland, in all honesty. So you're probably expecting 90 minutes from him. And KDB being fit is a massive advantage. Also, we know that Haaland's record against slightly weaker defences at home is ridiculous. It's so good. I was watching FPL Black Box and they said that against bottom 6 defences, whether or not you want to consider Ipswich one, we'll discuss in a second, his average points across the last 2 seasons is about 8.5. So we are, by all accounts, and you can see here, Haaland, according to the bookies, has a 74% chance of scoring. So by all accounts, we are expecting Haaland to get at least 8 to 9 points. Maybe he could blank, but I'm not expecting that. No one is. So let's say, as a kind of minimum, but not necessarily a minimum, 8 to 9 points. That's a fine triple captain. You're gaining 8 or 9 points. You've used the chip and then you can focus on other stuff down the line. Obviously, that is kind of I wouldn't say worst case scenario, but one of the lower opportunity. I don't even know what I'm trying to say. 8 or 9 points you would say is quite low. He could go out there and get a brace. He could go out there and get a hat-trick, 21, 25 points. And that's what you're hoping for. So, yeah, I mean, there are so many pros. If I had him, I would consider it. I wouldn't do it, but it would at least be a consideration. So why wouldn't you? I've just given so many reasons as to why you might potentially want to do it. There could be better opportunities. We saw last season when Luton and Bournemouth had their double rearrange. Obviously, I'm not saying you would want to captain a Bournemouth player, but lots of people look to then triple captain Solanke. There could be just a random scenario that crops up where a really decent team gets a postponement, and then they have a really nice double game week. Also, the mystery chip may be better used in a blank week, or it might just be something that isn't related to blanks and doubles, in which case, let's say you play the free hit in a blank and you play the bench boost in one of your double game weeks, well, then you've still got 1 double game week left. So, yes, at the moment, it looks like you might have to play the triple captain in a single, but we don't know that. And also, there might be better single game week opportunities. It might be that by the time Salah plays against Southampton later in the season at home, Southampton have all of their back line completely injured and their keeper gets injured in the warm-up or something. I know that is such a sensationalised, hypothetical situation, but at that stage, then Salah against Southampton at home with no fully fit defenders would be a better opportunity. So right now, we don't know. And that's one of the advantages to triple captaining Haaland is that we have a bit more certainty about him as an option, but there could be better opportunities in the future. Also, are Ipswich a team to target? I've got no idea because I don't have enough data. Last season, they were pretty good defensively in the Championship. I think in that first half against Liverpool, they were really, really decent. I know after that, they then shipped a ton of chances. So maybe that'll be what we see against City, but I don't know right now if Ipswich are one of the worst defences in the league. You think they might be because 2 years ago they were playing in League One, but I can't confirm that. I don't have the data to go off. So it might be that actually Fulham are the worst defence in the league. I don't think so with their new signings, which we've already discussed, but it might be that Wolves are going to be the worst, or it might be that Leicester or Southampton are more targetable. So I don't know right now if Ipswich are the team to target because I don't have the data. Also, Ipswich were last season better defensively away from home. They conceded far more goals at home because they go more for that attacking style, which we saw against Liverpool. For large spells of that game, especially in the first half, they brought the game to Liverpool. There's no way, and if they do, by the way, it's going to be like 10-0, I think. There's no way they go to the Etihad and try and take the game fully to City. I think they'll set up much more defensively. And so it might be that once we get more data and more information, actually the best place to target a captaincy is actually Ipswich when they're playing at home. So an Ipswich away fixture. And obviously Haaland later in the season will play Ipswich away. So I know, this sounds like copium for the fact I don't own him. I'm just trying to give you the pros and the cons. And also, this is kind of more of a narrative, but City do often start the season quite slowly. They sometimes don't start to click until November, December time. And maybe you want to wait until City are firing on all cylinders. Because in all honesty, I was not impressed with their performance against Man United. And whilst people were saying like, it was just a training ground performance against Chelsea, they didn't even need to get into second gear, I still don't think they were that impressive against Chelsea. So, yeah, listen. Could City put 9 goals past Ipswich? Yes. But could I see this being 1, 2, 3-0? I absolutely could. And unless Haaland gets all of those goals, which he absolutely could, by the way, then I think there could be better opportunities in the future. So if I had Haaland, I wouldn't even consider not captaining him. He's obviously the best captaincy option. That is not me trying to jinx it. I think it's almost factual. Objectively speaking, he is the best captaincy option. But is he triple captain worthy? It's worth consideration, but I wouldn't do it. I'd love to know down below what you would do. I will not talk anyone out of it. You can see there are plenty of pros, but I think there are also some cons. And at the end of the day, you've just got to pray for some good luck. So based on polls that I've seen, it does look at like about 5 to 10% of people are wildcarding. I think a lot of those, maybe it was planned. Maybe you bench boost in game week 1, or you wanted to start with Salah and then switch to Haaland, and that's absolutely fine. If you've not yet activated it, I would probably recommend that you don't, because I don't think it's needed for pretty much, I'd say like 95% of teams don't really need it. Again, unless it was planned and you've got a team where you really wanted it from game week 2. But just very briefly, and I'm not going to spend too long on it, this is roughly what my setup would be of a wildcard. And you might laugh at me, I wouldn't have Haaland. And the reason for that is this wildcard now has to see you through. And I think around game week 4 or 5, most people will look to move to Salah because Salah is the best captaincy in 5 and he's got a nice little run of fixtures. After that, you then might want to switch back to Haaland. But this is why it would be good to save the wildcard for somewhere between game week 6 and 8 so that you can make the switch between Salah and Haaland easier. But as of right now, I still do slightly prefer the Salah drafts. If you wanted a Haaland draft, it's just a matter of switching a few players out. Obviously, downgrade Salah all the way, upgrade one of Muniz or João Pedro if you want to. But this is what I would be going for. I wouldn't be silly enough to have no City cover for the next 3 games, though. So I've got Guardiola in there and I've got Foden. I think Foden will start. And I think if he has a good game, gets maybe 70 minutes, looks fit, I think he could start the next 2 after that as well. And I feel like the upside is there to attack it. You could go for a Cole Palmer instead if you prefer him in there, or you go for a much cheaper asset and upgrade one of the forwards if you want to. But this is what I'd go for. I'd have Raya, Gvardiol, Trent. I would cover the 3 best defences in the league. Raya made a few more saves in game week 1, so maybe that's a sign of things to come. Gvardiol and Trent we know are absolutely fantastic. I've actually gone for Colwill here, but you can see if I scroll down, I've got Dunk on the bench. So you can go for any 2 defenders you want, but I feel like Colwill could be good value if he continues to start. And Dunk from game week 4 onwards has some pretty nice fixtures for Brighton. So those 2 rotate fairly well. I've got Greaves as my 4 million defender. In midfield, it's fairly kind of template and standard. I've got Salah, Eze, Saka, Foden, and Rodgers. I think all of those are fine options. Rodgers from game week 3, if he continues to get good minutes, should be a really nice option. And I do really want to attack it with Foden. I would say the key omission in this midfield is that I don't currently have Diogo Jota, who I think is arguably one of the better assets in the game. So, of course, if you would rather go for Jota than Foden, I love that, but then it's basically my midfield. If you'd rather go for Jota than Salah and find a way to squeeze Haaland in, you can absolutely do that. So there are variations. I just think I would rather have the upside of Foden with the fixtures coming up. And also, I think Salah is still the best Liverpool asset. And Eze and Saka, they're on pens. The minutes will be good. I like them. And then the front three, it looks fairly cheap, but I mean, you've got a lot of money invested elsewhere, right? You've got basically 3 premium midfielders and a very expensive defence. Isak for now is fine. After the next few weeks, you could downgrade him to Havertz if you want to. You could try and find the funds to upgrade him to Ollie Watkins as well. So Isak for now is fine, but I don't think he's a season keeper. I think there will be points you want to take him out. Moniz at 6 million. I think I would want some attackers from Fulham. So I've gone for Moniz right now. You could try and get Smith Rowe in there instead of Rodgers if you want to. I just think I like this setup of having Moniz as the forward. And then I've got João Pedro. Obviously not ideal to start this week. I'm fully aware of that. But then from next week, you do have the option to rotate him with Rodgers as well. So I think overall, this is a pretty strong team. There are variations of it you could go for. I'm not saying it's one that you should definitely go with. I know most people will say you cannot wildcard in a week where City have Ipswich and not go for Haaland. But this isn't a free hit. This is a wild card. If you just desperately wanted Haaland for game week 2, you free hit. And I still don't think that's a great idea. But for me, I think if you're wild carding, you need to set your team up for the long term. And I just think this is a pretty good structure to go with. So this, again, isn't copium for not having Haaland. I just think this is the best structure. I'd love to know if you're wild carding, what are you going for? And yeah, I personally wouldn't do it, but I think this team's pretty decent. It's rated at 97% according to Fantasy Football Hub. And if you want to plan out your team and use your team in this format and look ahead, like you can look ahead for future weeks. I had a look, the rotation works pretty nice for future weeks. You can also look at price changes on your team as well. You can get AI recommended transfers. I mean, there's so much over at Fantasy Football Hub. I've spoken about it already in previous videos, but £3.25 per month it costs, which is pretty good value, I think. There'll be a link down below for 50% off, and do consider checking it out. So guys, as of right now, this is my team. Pedro Porro is flagged, but we know as of the press conference that he's fine, and Solanke isn't flagged, but again, we know from the press conference that he is out for game week 2. So I have 2 things to think about. One is, do I want to remove Solanke, and if so, for who? And then the other thing is, if I decide to remove Solanke, I have to start one of Gabriel or Robinson. Now, as I said, I think, or I hinted at earlier in the video, I could play a 4-4... No, it's not 4-4-2, is it? It's a 4-5-1. So I could play this. So I don't have to sell Solanke. I could roll again, assess what happens next week, and it removes that benching headache of who do I start out of Gabriel and Robinson, and I think they're both perfectly fine. So that is genuinely an option. It's something which I will strongly consider. But I do think there are some really exciting Solanke replacements, and considering he's got Newcastle and Arsenal after that, he's relatively highly owned at 28.5%. I think he'll fall in price now. For all of those reasons, I'm not really wanting to keep him in that much at the moment. So if I do replace him, I have 0.5 in the bank. Do you know what? My brain this morning when I saw the rumours about Solanke being injured, I was like, oh, fantastic. I'm going to get Havertz when I triple Arsenal. Havertz has gone up to 8.1 million. So sadly, I can't get Havertz. I'm 0.1 short. But I really like some of the cheaper options. So to go through them, Armstrong, absolutely fantastic. I think they're really nice fixtures that Southampton have coming up. And he was really impressive. He had 0.79 XGI against Newcastle. He's on penalties. His minutes should be pretty good. I don't think he'll get 90 minutes every single week. I think Archer will take some minutes off of him, but he feels relatively nailed. Outside of that, I know he's not a fan favourite for many, but João Pedro, still owned by almost 20%, by the way. His minutes will be good. The fixtures from Game Week 4, well, not from Game Week 4, for 4 and 5 are decent, but then if I don't wildcard in 6, I don't love this spell here. I just think for me, these fixtures aren't quite strong enough for me for João Pedro. I know lots of people talk about Welbeck. If I'm going to go for one, I would probably go for João Pedro. Outside of that, Chris Wood, not really my favourite player in the world. I think he was very lucky to get his return in game week 1. I know his XG is extremely high, but that was basically just a tap-in, right? And also I think his minutes, with Awoniyi being fit and also Nketiah probably joining, I think long-term Chris Wood's minutes could be a doubt. So really, for me, the standout option is Moniz. I know he's not been great in the last few games, even the back end of last season, a few of the away games he blanked, but he's actually scored in 7 of his last 8 home games in the Premier League. So he's very good at home, and in the next 3, they've got Leicester, West Ham. Sorry, in the next 4, they've got Leicester, West Ham, and Newcastle at home, and their only away game is Ipswich. And we've spoken about Ipswich at home themselves really go for it, and they're very attacking. So I like the idea right now of Solanke to Moniz. It gives me some Fulham attacking cover, if that exists, for these 2 good games. And Moniz was a player that I really wanted to start the season with, but I just saw the allure of Solanke. So I'm not going to actually make the transfer now, but that would be the move, Solanke to Moniz. As you can see, that would give me 2 million in the bank. So that would put me in a really flexible position moving forward to go for another Arsenal defender I could do. Like moving forward, I could do something like Robinson to Saliba when Arsenal's fixtures improve. I could upgrade Eze to someone like Bruno Fernandes or Martin Odegaard if I wanted to. At some point in the future, I could do Isak to Havertz really comfortably, or even Watkins really comfortably when their fixtures improve. So that 2 million could go a really long way. Maybe Henderson, I just decided, is not the one. Henderson to Raya, and I've still got 1 million in the bank. So I also like the idea of this move freeing up funds for me. So as of right now, obviously tune into the deadline stream tomorrow morning to see what I do as my final set of moves. But as of right now, I'm planning on playing Robinson, benching Gabriel, and then selling Solanke for Moniz. There is part of me that just wants to play Gabriel, but I just think Robinson maybe has the highest ceiling this week. And like I said, let me know if you think it's a mistake, if I should just do this. It would leave me with absolutely no bench cover is the only slight issue. But I also think that back four is really strong. So I'd love to know what you think. Let me know what you're doing with your team, and let me know who your favourite Solanke replacement is as well. So guys, for those of you that have been following my journey as the manager of South London United over at One Future Football, we've actually reached the final. So it's been 25 long games, went through the playoffs. Last year we finished bottom of the league. And as of Saturday night at 9:30 p.m, we'll be playing in the final against Brazil, Amazonia. So I would love your support. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, there'll be a video down below where I explain what this is. But basically, I'm managing a virtual global football team, which is run by a very advanced AI engine. And I am responsible for the tactics, the players, but also you guys train the players as well. So you guys are genuinely a large majority of the reason that we're in the final, because our players have improved so much because you've been training them. But I just wanted to show you the trailer for the final because honestly, it looks pretty insane. Obviously, I am managing South London United. The team we're playing against is Brazil Amazonia. Gave me a bit of goosebumps. So I'm going to roll the trailer and yeah, I'll see you in a second. So guys, there we go. That is the final. Like I said, it'll be at 9:30 p.m. UK time. Please check out, it's on YouTube. So if you just type in One Future Football, go to their YouTube channel here. You can see this is the channel that you're looking for and go onto lives and it's scheduled for the time. So you just click on it and as of then, you'll be able to watch the simulation. I will absolutely be live in the chat. Don't worry. And I'm fingers crossed we can win the final. And yeah, if you want to support me, once you sign up to One Future Football, there'll be a link down below to sign up. All you need to do is go into your dashboard, which is the top right corner, and just say that you support South London United. That's it. It's completely free. You don't have to pay for anything. You just have to sign up, say you support South London, and fingers crossed we can win the final and then go into season 4, which is next season, looking extremely strong. So yeah, check out the announcement video. Be there live at the game at 9:30. And also make sure you sign up and say you support South London. So guys, there we have it. That is the Game Week 2 Deadline Decisions video. Hopefully you did get some use out of it. And if you did, please do smash that like button and make sure to subscribe as well. And as I said, please do check out Fantasy Football Hub. There'll be links down below to get 50% off. I really appreciate the support. But until next time, thank you very much. Bye-bye.